Let's return to this issue of the migrant sex offender mistakenly released from prison, who was given a £500 payment after threatening to disrupt his deportation from the UK to Ethiopia. Well, let's get more on this from Harjap Singh Bhangal, an immigration and human rights solicitor. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. What do you make of the fact that he was given £500? To most people, it would seem the most extraordinary thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was counted as a voluntary return. So there's a difference between returning and deportation. A lot of which the government says we've deported people. When you actually look into the figures, it turns out to be that people have gone home voluntarily with an incentive of up to £3,000 to go back, which the government puts on its website under the voluntary return scheme. Anyone can Google that and see the offer is there. I mean, they've been doing it for a long time. So, I mean, it's there, something that's there voluntarily. It's part of the government's new legislation where they said that they will offer any foreign offender who wants to go back after 30% of their certain sentence is complete, that they will say, right, you need to go back and you can go back now. However, that does leave a lot of doubts in people's minds, especially the victims of justice. I mean, there was a case in West London in 2010 where a husband killed his wife, and he was sentenced to 28 years in prison in the UK. After 8 years, he was sent back, offered a voluntary return. He went back, and in 2018, he was seen in jacuzzis, and he bribed his way out of the prison where he went back to India, and he's been walking free ever since. So the victims here, really, they're the ones who are hard done by in this. If somebody is sent home early, it suits the government's figures to say we've sent back this many a year, and this is another way to bolster those figures and to sort of embolden them and to tell the public, look, we've sent back this many this year.
But this guy was forcibly deported. He didn't go voluntarily.
Well, he was deported, had deportation order, but he was given a chance of going back early. If he was deported, he would have finished his whole sentence here, which he didn't. We know that. So what happens is, if you are given 12 months or more, then you're subject to automatic deportation. But if someone's sent back after 2 weeks of a 12-month sentence, then you have to wonder that, well, hold on, is that a deportation? Or he could have challenged that actually in the court and by law, which would have then sort of frustrated the government's refusal of him for maybe a few months.
Well, that's their justification for paying him the £500, because they said essentially he'd go quietly, and yet they had to send 5 guards with him on the flight, which again shows that it was forced, I suppose.
Well, the government is sort of between a rock and a hard place. We have one hand people calling, the public calling, well, send them back, we don't care, we don't want them here, send them back as soon as you can. And then you have the victims of these crimes saying, well, hold on, we haven't served the sentence. If he goes back and he's out next week and he's living it up, like many people who come from corrupt countries can do, they have access to be freed very quickly without serving their full sentence, then they'll say, well, hold on, where's the justice in that? I mean, say if someone was raped, say if someone's daughter was raped and they were sentenced to 8-9 years, and after a year the government said, well, send him back voluntarily, and the next 6 weeks after he'd gone back, you see him living it up in a jacuzzi or in hotels and saying, well, I'm walking around free. How would the victim feel? I mean, who's going to explain to the victim that just to bolster our figures and to send him out of the country due to the public's will, that he didn't serve his sentence that we had sentenced him to in the UK? I mean, it is a very rock and a hard place.
But the fact that you even said that he could have appealed through the courts for being not deported, I mean, just shows the system does not work. And this plays into, I guess, Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch saying we should withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights and have our own human rights law.
Well, everyone has rights. Even a murderer who's sentenced to, say, death or sentenced to life, they'll get a right to appeal their sentence. That's everybody's right. So to do that, so availing your rights isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's up to the court then to deal with it effectively and to deal with the process in time.
He would have been appealing against. He would have been appealing against his deportation.
Yeah, that's right, and it's his right to do so, just like everyone else has a right
Well, why does he have any rights as an illegal immigrant to this country who's come here illegally, has committed a serious criminal offence, been sentenced to time in jail? I think any logical person would think, well, those are grounds to deport him, and the courts have no right to interfere in that.
Well, everyone has rights, and this is what it is. Everyone has rights.
I'm sorry, no, they don't. No, they don't. Legal citizens have rights, but people who come here illegally and then commit crimes, they forfeit some of their rights.
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, they don't. Even if you're illegal,
well, they should.
and the government has banded you illegal, you still have rights. So if someone crosses the border and they're fleeing persecution from a country, and they commit a crime or the government deemed a crime, would you say they've forfeited every single right to be here and to be sent back and face possible death?
Absolutely, I would. Anybody that comes to this country illegally and commits a crime, they should automatically be deported with no appeal.
And that's based on the fact that they're just born abroad.
They're born abroad.
They're not born in the right place.
They have They have no right to be here. It's based on the right. They have no right to be here. And if they come here seeking asylum and seeking to be supported by the British taxpayer, and then they commit a serious crime, then I'm sorry, they forfeited all of those rights.
Yeah, but this is what the courts determine. That's what the courts are there to determine.
We don't need a court to determine that.
They're there to determine the law and interpret the law.
We don't need a court to determine that. If they've committed a crime and they've been sentenced to that crime, then they should be automatically deported without any appeal whatsoever.
Well, then, if people who want the death penalty, could you argue the same case, right?
Well, we don't have the death penalty.
People who want castration
classic whataboutery from human rights lawyer. Yes, it is.
It's not whataboutery.
We don't have the death penalty in this country.
No, it's not about whataboutery.
Well, if we don't have the death penalty, why bring it up?
Used as an argument. Everyone has rights. Just as someone would be, if someone's fired from a job for stealing, they still have rights to go to a tribunal.
Because they're a citizen of this country and they're allowed to work here.
They still have a right. Even if you're not a citizen of this country, you'll be surprised to know that you can still go to an employment tribunal.
No, I know that, but if you're working here legally, of course you do. If you're working here illegally, you don't.
Yeah, but like I said, everyone has rights. So then what you're saying, if someone comes illegally, they don't have any rights?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Well, that's a dangerous thing to go down.
I don't think it is. I think the pendulum has swung far too far in your direction, and you and your ilk make a lovely living of human rights cases.
We don't benefit anything from it.
Yes, you do with your massive fees.
Oh, well, okay, so that's just like saying that you benefit for working for billionaires who own the media and singing their tune. Of course,
I don't sing anybody's tune.
Oh, well, people will argue otherwise. Well, I'm sure your listeners do, and I'm sure they do. But
people can argue all they like. I know the fact.
Let's go to what the law actually says, that people do have rights. There's a process for it. Let the process take place. But in this case, the government said to this person, do you know what? You can forfeit your process. We'll give you the £500. We're going to send you back anyway. And he's gone. So what's wrong in that?
We've given him 500. We've given him
£500, and he's gone.
You asked me a question. Let me answer it. What's wrong?
If there was a sex offender living on your street, and you could get rid of him by paying £500, would you or not?
If I could get rid of that,
of course you would.
No,
of course you would.
No,
so
I don't. Because I don't believe. Unlike you, I have some morals. I don't believe that the taxpayers should be paying sex offenders money.
Well, then should they pay him to be locked up for a year in prison?
I'm very happy for him to be deported, but I don't think he should have been given £500.
Well, this is the government's way of getting rid of him.
Well, maybe, I'm saying I wouldn't pay him £500 to go.
No, but you'd pay for £5,000 to keep him incarcerated for a year.
Oh, for goodness' sake! Are these really the arguments you deploy for your clients? Because I'm surprised you've got any.
He committed a crime. He's gone. End of story.
Excellent.
What's the debate about?
But why give him taxpayers' money?
Well, to keep him locked up would have cost the taxpayer too, right?
No, that's not an argument. It's either moral to give him money or it isn't. I'm saying it isn't moral. You're saying it is. Well, we will agree to disagree.
No, I'm saying it works. It worked, didn't it? It got a result. There was a result at the end of it.
Yeah, but he could have gone anyway without being given £500. He could have been put. He had 5 people accompanying him, so they could have made sure that he got on the flight and went.
He would have had to finish his sentence here.
It's like talking to a bloody brick wall, isn't it? Thank you very much indeed. Harjap Singh Bhangal, there, immigration and human rights solicitor, a perfect example of why we need fewer of them.